I still remember the exact moment it happened. It was a Tuesday evening in March, 5 years ago, at Murphy's Pub in downtown Chicago. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and the sound of clinking glasses, and I was sitting at our usual table. With my college friends, the same group that had been meeting every month since graduation 3 years prior. "So what's new with everyone?" Sarah asked, taking a sip of her craft beer. She had always been the one to initiate these conversations. Probably because her job at the marketing firm gave her plenty of stories to share. Mike was going on about his promotion at the accounting firm, how he was finally making 6 figures and could afford that downtown apartment he'd been eyeing. Jessica chimed in about her new position at the law firm, the prestige, the corner office with a view of Lake Michigan. Then it was my turn. "Actually," I said, feeling my heart rate pick up, "I've been thinking about starting my own company." The table went silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence that sometimes settles over friends, but the awkward, heavy kind that makes you wish you could take back what you just said. Mike was the first to break it. "A company?" He let out a short laugh. "Doing what exactly?" I took a deep breath. I had been working on this idea for months, staying up late researching market trends, consumer behavior, digital marketing strategies, digital marketing consultancy. I've noticed a huge gap in the market for small and medium businesses that can't afford the big agencies but need professional help with their online presence. That's when it started, the laughter. Mike threw his head back and laughed so hard I thought he might choke on his beer. Sarah covered her mouth, but I could see her shoulders shaking. Even Jessica, usually the most diplomatic of the group, had a smirk on her face. "Come on, man," Mike said, wiping tears from his eyes. "You've been working at that retail store for 3 years. What do you know about running a company? About marketing? About business?" "I've been studying," I said, feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I've taken online courses, read books, watched tutorials. I even created a mock campaign for online courses." Sarah interrupted, still giggling. "You think watching YouTube videos makes you qualified to run a business?" Jessica leaned forward, her expression more serious but still condescending. "Look, I get it. We all have dreams. But starting a company requires capital, connections, experience. You don't have any of those things. Maybe you should look for a real job first, get some actual experience in the field." "This is a real job," I said, my voice quieter now. "This is what I want to do with my life." Mike shook his head. "It's not about what you want, it's about what's realistic. You're 25, you've got student loans, you live in a studio apartment in Wicker Park. How are you going to fund this fantasy?" "I've saved up some money, and I've been looking into small business loans." "Jesus Christ," Mike muttered. "You're actually serious about this?" The conversation moved on after that, but the damage was done. For the rest of the evening I sat there quietly, nursing my beer and listening to them talk about their real jobs, their real careers, their real futures. Every now and then one of them would make a joke about my little business idea, and the others would chuckle. I walked home that night through the cold Chicago streets, my breath visible in the frigid air, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. The worst part wasn't the laughter, it was the doubt it planted in my head. Were they right? Was I being naive? Was I just a dreamer with no grasp on reality? But as I climbed the 3 flights of stairs to my tiny studio apartment, something else started growing inside me. Anger, determination, a fire that their laughter had inadvertently ignited. I sat at my desk that night, surrounded by business, books and printed articles about entrepreneurship, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let their doubt become my doubt. I wasn't going to let their fear become my fear. I was going to prove them wrong, not because I wanted to show off, but because I believed in myself when no one else would. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I spent the entire day working on my business plan, refining my services, researching my competition. I contacted 3 small businesses in my neighborhood and offered to create free sample marketing campaigns for them. 2 of them said yes. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the work. I learned more about digital marketing in those weeks than I had in months of casual study. I discovered that I had a natural talent for understanding what made people tick, what made them want to buy, what made them trust a brand. The two businesses I worked with saw immediate results. One was a small Italian restaurant that had been struggling to attract customers. I created a social media strategy that highlighted their authentic family recipes and cozy atmosphere. Within 2 weeks, they were booked solid for weekend dinners. The other was a local fitness trainer who had been trying to grow his client base. I developed a content marketing strategy that positioned him as a health and wellness expert. He gained 200 new followers in his first month and booked 5 new clients. But the real validation came when both business owners offered to pay me for my services, even though I had told them it was free. They wanted to hire me for ongoing work. I quit my retail job the next week. My manager, a woman in her 50s who had been working retail for most of her adult life, looked at me like I was crazy when I gave my notice. "You're leaving to start your own business?" she asked, her voice filled with the same skepticism I had heard from my friends. "Do you have any idea how many businesses fail in their first year?" "I'm willing to take that risk," I said. She shook her head. "Well, when this doesn't work out, we probably won't have a position available for you." "I understand," I said. "But it's going to work out." The first few months were brutal. I was working 16-hour days, living off ramen noodles and instant coffee, pitching my services to anyone who would listen. I faced rejection after rejection, heard no more times than I could count. There were nights when I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if my friends had been right, if I was just fooling myself. But I kept going. I kept learning, kept improving, kept hustling. I landed my first paying client 3 months after, quitting my job at a small law firm that needed help with their website and social media presence. The retainer fee was modest, but it was enough to pay my rent for 2 months. That first success led to another, and another. Word started spreading about the young guy who could help businesses grow their online presence without breaking the bank. I was getting referrals, building a reputation, slowly but surely establishing myself in the Chicago business community. By the end of my first year, I had 12 clients and had made more money than I ever had in retail. I moved out of my studio apartment and into a 1-bedroom in Lincoln Park. I bought my first business suit, opened a business bank account, got business cards printed, but the memory of that night at Murphy's Pub never left me. The sound of their laughter, the condescension in their voices, the way they dismissed my dreams as foolish fantasies. It became my fuel, my motivation, my reminder of why I couldn't give up. I didn't see much of my old friends during that first year. I was too busy building my company, and honestly, I wasn't ready to face them yet. I wasn't ready for the "I told you so" if things went wrong, and I wasn't sure how I'd handle running into them if things went right. But late at night, when I was working on client campaigns or developing new strategies, I would think about them. I would imagine the day when I could walk back into Murphy's Pub, sit down at that same table and tell them about my success. Not to gloat, but to show them that dreams aren't always fantasies, that sometimes the impossible is just the untried. That day was coming sooner than I thought. The year 2 was when everything changed. Not overnight, but gradually. Like watching the sunrise, you don't notice it happening until suddenly the whole sky is bright. I had learned something crucial during those first 12 months. Success in business isn't just about having a good idea or working hard. It's about understanding people, what they need, what they fear, what they want to become. And I was getting very good at understanding people. My breakthrough came with a client named Robert Chun, who owned a small chain of 3 Chinese restaurants in different Chicago neighborhoods. He had been struggling with online reviews and competition from larger chains. When he hired me, his restaurants were barely staying afloat. "Everyone go to Panda Express now," he told me during our first meeting, his accent thick with frustration. "They think fast food is same as real Chinese food. I cook authentic recipes my grandmother teach me in Shanghai, but nobody care." I spent 2 weeks visiting his restaurants, talking to his staff, eating his food, watching his customers. What I discovered was that Robert wasn't just selling food, he was selling culture, tradition, family history. But none of that was coming through in his marketing. I developed a comprehensive campaign that told the story of Robert's family. Their immigration to America, the way his grandmother's recipes had been passed down through generations. We created videos showing Robert in his kitchen, explaining the difference between authentic and fast food Chinese cuisine. We partnered with local food bloggers who specialized in ethnic cuisine. We organized authentic Chinese cooking workshops at each location. The results were extraordinary. Within 6 months, all 3 restaurants had waiting lists on weekends. Robert opened his 4th location, then his 5th. The local food magazine featured him as Chicago's most authentic Chinese chef. He went from barely surviving to thriving. But more importantly, Robert became my advocate. He told everyone about the young marketer who had saved his business. He referred me to other restaurant owners, shop owners, service providers in Chicago's diverse business community. That's when I realized I needed help. I was turning down clients because I couldn't handle the workload alone. So I made my first hire, a recent college graduate named Emma, who had majored in marketing but was working as a barista because she couldn't find a job in her field. "Why should I work for a company that doesn't even have an office?" she asked. During her interview, which I conducted at a Starbucks in downtown Chicago. "Because this company is going to be huge," I said. "And you can either be part of building something from the ground up, or you can keep waiting for some corporation to give you a cubicle and a steady paycheck." She took the job. It was the best decision I made that year. Emma brought fresh ideas, new energy, and a different perspective that complemented my own. Together, we developed systems, processes, and strategies that allowed us to scale. We rented our first real office, a small space above a deli in River North. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. By the end of year 2. We had 35 clients and had generated over $400,000 in revenue. I was paying myself a salary that was 3 times what I had made in retail. And I was able to give Emma a raise and a bonus, but success brought new challenges. Bigger clients meant bigger expectations. More employees meant more responsibility. And with growth came visibility, including visibility to people from my past. The first encounter happened at a networking event at the Chicago Convention Center. I was there representing my company, wearing a tailored suit and carrying business cards that actually impressed people. I was in the middle of a conversation with a potential client when I felt a tap on my shoulder. "Holy shit, is that really you?" I turned around to see David Martinez, another friend from college who hadn't been at that fateful dinner at Murphy's, but had heard about it from the others. David worked in sales for a tech company and had always been the type to measure success by salary and job title. "David," I said, extending my hand. "Good to see you." He looked me up and down, taking in the suit, the confidence, the business cards I was holding. "Mike told me you were trying to start some kind of business." I thought it was just a phase." "It wasn't a phase," I said simply. "So this is real? You actually have a company?" I handed him my business card. "We're doing pretty well." He stared at the card for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. "We should get coffee sometime," he said. "I'd love to hear more about what you're doing." That was the beginning of what I came to think of as the shift. Word was getting out that the guy who used to work retail and live in a studio apartment was now running a successful business. The same people who had laughed at my dreams were suddenly interested in my story, but the real test came 6 months later when I got a text from Sarah. "Hey, we're all meeting at Murphy's on Friday. Haven't seen you in forever. You should come." I stared at that text for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to stay focused on my business and forget about the past. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the sting of their laughter, wanted to go. Not to show off, but to see how I felt sitting at that table again. To see if their opinions still mattered to me. I decided to go. The pub looked exactly the same as it had 2 years earlier. Same dim lighting, same smell of beer and fried food, same worn wooden tables. But I felt completely different walking through those doors. They were already there when I arrived. Mike, Sarah, Jessica, and David. They looked up as I approached, and I could see surprise in their faces. The last time they had seen me, I was the dreamer with the crazy idea. Now I was wearing a $2,000 suit and carrying myself with the confidence of someone who had bet on himself and won. Look who decided to show up, Mike said, but his tone was different now. Less mocking, more curious. Good to see you all, I said, taking my seat at the table. The conversation started awkwardly, with everyone tiptoeing around the obvious question. Finally, Sarah asked it. So, how's the business going? I could have bragged. I could have told them about our revenue, our growth, our success stories. Instead, I said, it's going well. We've been busy. We heard you have an office now, Jessica said. And employees, David added. I nodded. A few. Mike leaned forward. Come on, man. Don't be modest. We heard you're doing really well. There was something in his voice that I hadn't heard before. Respect maybe, or envy, or both. We're doing okay, I said. Still a lot of work to do. The conversation continued, but it was different now. They asked questions about my business, about marketing, about entrepreneurship. They listened to my answers with attention instead of skepticism. And slowly I realized something important. Their opinions didn't matter to me anymore, 2 years earlier. Their laughter had crushed me because I had needed their validation. I had wanted them to believe in my dream because I wasn't completely sure I believed in it myself. But now I knew who I was and what I was capable of. Their approval was nice, but it wasn't necessary. As the evening wound down, Mike pulled me aside. Listen, he said, looking uncomfortable. I owe you an apology. We were pretty harsh that night when you told us about your business idea. You thought you were being realistic, I said. Maybe, but we were also being assholes. He paused. The thing is, I've been thinking about making a change myself. I'm tired of working for someone else, tired of making other people rich while I just get a paycheck. I could see where this was going, but I let him continue. I was wondering if you might have any advice, or if you might be looking for someone with my experience. And there it was. The moment I had imagined so many times during those long, difficult months of building my business. One of the people who had laughed at my dream was now asking for my help. Send me your resume, I said. We'll see if there's a fit. Walking home that night, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction, because I had proven them wrong, because I had turned their laughter into my fuel and their doubt into my determination. But sadness too, because I realized how much their original reaction had hurt me, and how much energy I had spent trying to prove myself to people whose opinions ultimately didn't matter, but that was behind me now. I had built something real, something valuable, something that was growing every day. And I was just getting started. By year 3, my company had become something I never could have imagined during those early days of working, 16-hour shifts and living off instant ramen. We had moved into a proper office space in the Loop, complete with a conference room, individual offices, and a kitchen area where my team could actually take breaks and eat real food. I now had 12 employees, and we were generating over $1.20 million in annual revenue. We had worked with more than 150 clients, ranging from small family businesses to mid-sized companies looking to expand their digital presence. Our success stories were being featured in local business publications, and I had been invited to speak at several entrepreneurship conferences, but the most satisfying part wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the people who were now reaching out to me. Emma, who had been my first hire, was now my director of operations and had a team of 5 people under her. During our monthly one-on-one meeting, she brought up something that had been happening more frequently. We're getting a lot of resumes from people who seem to know you personally, she said, pulling up her laptop. I've got applications here. From a Mike Thompson, a Sarah Williams, and a Jessica Chun, they all mention having a personal connection with you. I smiled. They're old friends from college. Should I prioritize their applications? I thought about it for a moment. 2 years earlier, I might have felt vindicated enough to hire them just to prove a point. But now, I was running a real business with real responsibilities to my existing employees and clients. Treat them like any other applicants, I said. If they're qualified and would be a good fit for the team, we'll consider them. But I don't want to hire anyone just because I know them. Emma nodded. That's what I figured you'd say. Mike Thompson's background is in accounting, and we have been talking about bringing on a financial analyst. His experience could be relevant. Set up an interview, I said. But make sure he knows this is a professional evaluation, not a favor to an old friend. The interview with Mike was scheduled for the following week. I decided to let Emma conduct the initial screening, but I would be part of the final interview if he made it that far. Meanwhile, other opportunities were presenting themselves. I had been contacted by a business development firm about potential partnerships with larger companies. One of them was a mid-sized corporation that needed help with their digital marketing strategy, a contract that could bring in $200,000 in revenue over the next year. The meeting was set for a Thursday afternoon at their headquarters, a gleaming office tower in downtown Chicago. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and carrying a presentation that Emma and I had worked on for days. I was escorted to a conference room on the 20th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. As I set up my laptop and prepared my materials, the door opened and several executives walked in. The last person to enter was someone I recognized immediately. "Good afternoon," said the woman leading the group. "I'm Patricia Morrison, VP of Marketing. This is our team." She introduced each person, and when she got to the last one, she said, "And this is our Senior Marketing Manager, Sarah Williams." Sarah's eyes widened when she saw me, but she quickly recovered and extended her hand professionally. "Nice to meet you," she said, as if we were strangers. I shook her hand and smiled. Likewise, the presentation went well. I had done my homework on their company, their market, their challenges, and their opportunities. I presented case studies that were directly relevant to their industry, showed them potential strategies for improving their online presence, and outlined a comprehensive plan for achieving their goals. The executives asked thoughtful questions, and I could see they were impressed with the depth of our analysis and the practicality of our recommendations. Sarah, to her credit, was professional throughout the meeting, asking relevant questions and contributing to the discussion without any awkwardness. After the presentation, Patricia walked me to the elevator. That was exactly what we were looking for, she said. "We'll be in touch by the end of the week." As the elevator doors closed, I felt a familiar surge of satisfaction. Not because Sarah had seen me succeed, but because I had earned that success through hard work, expertise, and dedication. The contract was approved the following Friday. A few days later, I received a text from Sarah. "Congratulations on landing the Morrison account. You deserved it." "The presentation was impressive," I responded. "Thank you. I appreciate the professional feedback." She texted back, "Would you be open to having coffee sometime? I'd like to talk to you about something." We met at a cafe in River North, neutral territory away from both of our offices. Sarah looked different than she had at our college reunions, more polished, more serious, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who had climbed the corporate ladder. "I owe you an apology," she said, without preamble after we had ordered our drinks. "What we did that night at Murphy's was wrong. We were dismissive and cruel, and you didn't deserve that." "You thought you were being realistic," I said, echoing what I had told Mike. "No," she said firmly. "We were being small-minded. We were threatened by your ambition because it made us question our own choices. It was easier to tear down your dream than to examine why we weren't pursuing our own." I appreciated her honesty. I'm not going to lie, it hurt at the time, but it also motivated me. "I've been watching your company's growth from the outside," she said. "What you've built is impressive. The work you're doing, the team you've assembled, the results you're getting for clients, it's exactly what you said you wanted to do that night." "Thank you." She hesitated, then continued. "I have a confession. I've been unhappy at Morrison for a while. The corporate environment, the politics, the way they treat employees like replaceable parts. I've been thinking about making a change." "What kind of change?" "Working for a company that actually cares about results and treats people well. A company like yours." I studied her face, looking for signs of insincerity or desperation. What I saw was genuine respect and a desire for something better. "Are you asking for a job?" I'm asking if you consider me for a job. I know I don't deserve any special treatment, and I know you might not want to work with someone who doubted you. But I've learned a lot in the past few years, both professionally and personally. I thought about it. Sarah had experience with large corporate clients, knowledge of enterprise-level marketing strategies, and skills that could help us grow. But more importantly, she had shown the humility to acknowledge her mistakes and the courage to ask for a second chance. Send me your resume, I said. We'll see if there's a fit. Mike's interview process was more straightforward. He had strong analytical skills and experience with financial planning that we needed as the company grew. Emma recommended him after his second interview, and I agreed to hire him as our financial analyst. During his first week, he stopped by my office. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, he said. I know I wasn't exactly supportive. When you first told us about your business idea, you're here because you're qualified, I said. Let's focus on doing good work, he nodded. I just want you to know that I understand now what you saw back then. This company, this team, the way you treat people, it's everything that was missing from my corporate job. By the end of year 3, both Mike and Sarah were working for me. Mike had helped us implement financial systems that allowed us to track our profitability more accurately and plan for future growth. Sarah had led our expansion into working with larger clients, bringing her corporate experience to bear on complex marketing challenges, but the most meaningful moment came during our annual company retreat, which we held at a lodge in Wisconsin. All 15 of us were there, including spouses and partners, celebrating another successful year. After dinner, I stood up to address the group. I talked about our accomplishments, our goals for the coming year, and my gratitude for everyone's hard work. But then I did something I had never done before. I told them the story of that night at Murphy's pub. 5 years ago, I said, I told some friends about my dream of starting this company. They laughed. They told me I was being unrealistic, that I should get a real job instead of chasing fantasies. I looked around the room at the faces of my employees, Emma, who had believed in the company when it was just me and a dream. Marcus, our lead designer who had created visual campaigns that had won industry awards. Jennifer, our newest hire who had left a 6-figure corporate job to join our team. Some of those friends are in this room tonight, I continued, making eye contact with Mike and Sarah. And they're here not because I wanted to prove a point, but because they chose to be part of something bigger than themselves. Mike stood up. Can I say something? I nodded. That night at Murphy's, we weren't just laughing at your business idea. We were laughing at the possibility that someone could choose their own path, could build something from nothing, could bet on themselves and win. We were laughing because we were scared to take those kinds of risks ourselves. Sarah joined him. What you built here isn't just a successful company. It's proof that dreams aren't fantasies if you're willing to work for them. And it's shown all of us what's possible when you believe in yourself, even when nobody else does. The room was quiet for a moment, and then Emma started clapping. The rest of the team joined in, and I felt something I hadn't expected, not vindication or satisfaction, but gratitude. Gratitude for the journey, for the people who had joined me along the way, and even for that night of laughter that had started it all. Because without that laughter, without that doubt, I might never have found the fire that built this company today. I'm 30 years old and the CEO of a company that employs 23 people and generates over $2.8 million in annual revenue. The transformation from that uncertain 25-year-old to this moment still feels surreal sometimes, like watching someone else's life unfold through a lens of disbelief and quiet amazement. 5 years feels simultaneously like a lifetime and an instant long enough to build something substantial, quick enough that the memories of struggle remain vivid and immediate. We've moved into a larger office space in downtown Chicago, occupying the entire 10th floor of a glass tower that reflects the lake's surface during sunrise, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the bustling streets below, and offer a panoramic view of the city that once seemed so intimidating and full of closed doors. The rooftop terrace, accessible through French doors in our main conference room, has become more than just outdoor space. It's where the team often gathers for lunch or after-work events, where we've celebrated major client wins with champagne. Toasts against the backdrop of the Chicago skyline, where informal conversations have sparked our most innovative campaign ideas. The space itself tells our story in ways that visitors immediately understand, even before we begin presenting our capabilities. Modern workstations equipped with dual monitors, ergonomic chairs, and the latest design software occupy an open floor plan that encourage collaboration while providing quiet zones for focused work. A conference room with a wall-mounted 75-inch screen serves as our presentation theater, where we've pitched Fortune 500 executives and nervous small business owners with equal enthusiasm and preparation. The break room has become the unofficial heart of our company culture, featuring a coffee station that rivals any boutique cafe, a fully stocked refrigerator that Emma manages with military precision, and comfortable seating areas where spontaneous brainstorming sessions regularly evolve into breakthrough strategies. Motivational quotes and client success stories cover one wall, but the most meaningful decorations are the handwritten thank you notes from business owners whose lives we've helped transform, each one a reminder of why we do this work. Our client list includes Fortune 500 companies alongside the small businesses that were our foundation. Each relationship built on trust, results, and the personal touch that larger agencies often abandon in their pursuit of scale and efficiency. The Fortune 500 clients bring prestige and substantial budgets that allow us to invest in cutting-edge tools and talent, while the small businesses keep us grounded in the fundamentals of genuine relationship building and creative problem-solving with limited resources. This balance has become our competitive advantage. We understand both worlds intimately and can navigate between corporate complexity and entrepreneurial agility with equal skill. But the real measure of success isn't in the numbers that accountants track or the metrics that industry publications celebrate. It's in the moments when I see the impact we're having on people's lives and businesses, when abstract strategies translate into concrete improvements in someone's reality. These moments arrive unexpectedly, usually when I'm least prepared for them, and they remind me why I started this journey in the first place. They're the moments that transform business relationships into something deeper, more meaningful than transactional exchanges of service for payment. Last month, Robert Chen invited me to the grand opening of his 8th restaurant, a milestone that seemed impossible when we first met 5 years ago. The invitation arrived on elegant cardstock, embossed with gold lettering and featuring a photo collage that showed the evolution of his restaurant empire from that original small storefront to the modern, spacious locations that now dot the Chicago metropolitan area. Each image told part of the story we had helped write together through strategic marketing campaigns, brand development, and digital presence optimization. As I held the invitation, I remembered that first meeting when he was struggling to compete with fast food chains, when his beautiful restaurant sat nearly empty despite serving food that was genuinely exceptional. The grand opening event itself was a celebration that extended far beyond the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Local politicians attended, food bloggers documented every dish, and a line of curious customers stretched around 2 city blocks, many of them discovering Robert's cuisine for the first time through our targeted social media campaigns, but others returning as loyal fans who had supported his growth over the years. The restaurant's interior reflected his success, custom-designed lighting that highlighted the rich textures of traditional Chinese decor, spacious dining areas that could accommodate large families and intimate couples with equal comfort, and an open kitchen concept that allowed diners to witness the artistry of his cooking process. As I watched him cut the ribbon, surrounded by his family and dozens of employees whose jobs exist because his business thrived, I was transported back to that first meeting when he was struggling to compete with fast food chains. He had been so nervous that day, his hands shaking slightly, as he showed me financial statements that painted a grim picture of declining revenue and increasing competition. His English, though functional, carried the weight of someone still navigating a second language while trying to save his family's legacy. The restaurant itself had been beautiful but nearly empty during what should have been peak lunch hours. with incredible aromas wafting from a kitchen that deserved recognition but lacked visibility. His grandmother's traditional recipes were incredible dishes that had been perfected through generations of family tradition, each spice blend and cooking technique carrying stories of ancestry and cultural heritage. But no one knew about them beyond a small circle of neighborhood regulars. His marketing consisted of a faded sign with peeling paint, a basic website that looked like it had been designed in 2005, and word-of-mouth recommendations from the handful of loyal customers who had discovered his hidden gem through pure chance, rather than strategic outreach. "You saved my family's legacy," he told me that night at the grand opening, his eyes bright with pride and gratitude as he pulled me aside during the celebration, away from the crowd of well-wishers and photographers. His voice carried the weight of generations, the stories of ancestors who had perfected these recipes through decades of tradition, sacrifice, and love passed down through family members who had faced their own struggles in preserving cultural identity while adapting to new environments. "My grandmother's recipes, they live on because you helped me tell their story to people who never would have found us otherwise. My children, they will inherit something strong now, something that can support many families and honor where we came from while building something new." The restaurant was packed that evening, with every table occupied and a waiting list that extended 2 hours into the night. The energy was electric, servers moving efficiently between tables, the kitchen operating at full capacity, customers taking photos of artfully plated dishes to share on social media platforms that had become powerful tools for organic marketing. Many of the diners were first-time visitors who had discovered the restaurant through our digital campaigns, but others were returning customers, whose loyalty had been cultivated through years of consistent quality and service that exceeded expectations. These are the moments that matter more than any profit margin or revenue target, more than industry awards or recognition from business publications. They're the moments that validate every sleepless night spent perfecting campaign strategies, every rejected proposal that taught us something valuable about client needs and market positioning, every time I questioned whether I was building something worthwhile or simply chasing an impossible dream. They remind me that success in business is ultimately measured by the positive impact on human lives, rather than abstract financial metrics. Emma is now my Chief Operating Officer and owns equity in the company, a decision that felt natural given her unwavering loyalty and exceptional contributions to our growth, but also a strategic choice that aligned her long-term interests with the company's success. The equity partnership was structured carefully with legal guidance, ensuring that her ownership stake reflected both her current contributions and future potential while maintaining the company's ability to bring in additional partners or investors as we continue growing. She recently bought her first house, a charming 2-bedroom bungalow in a quiet neighborhood with mature trees and a small garden where she's started growing herbs and vegetables, and is planning her wedding for next spring to her college boyfriend, who proposed after seeing her career, stability, and happiness flourish. The transformation from that eager intern to a confident executive has been remarkable to witness, like watching someone discover capabilities they never knew they possessed. Her organizational skills have evolved from managing simple tasks like scheduling meetings and maintaining client files to orchestrating complex, multi-client campaigns with budgets that would have intimidated both of us just a few years ago. She now leads client presentations with poise and authority, managing relationships with C-suite executives who initially dismissed her as just the assistant, but now specifically request her involvement in strategic discussions. "I still can't believe that nervous kid in the suit who interviewed me at Starbucks is now running all of this," she told me during our last quarterly review, gesturing around the conference room where we were discussing expansion plans, profit sharing structures, and her potential role in opening a second office location. We both laughed, remembering how I had spilled coffee on my laptop during that first interview, and how she had helped me clean it up while simultaneously pitching herself for a position I wasn't even sure I could afford to fill. The irony wasn't lost on either of us that impromptu meeting in a coffee shop had led to a partnership that now generated enough revenue to support both of our career ambitions and personal goals. Her confidence now is unshakable, built through years of successful project management and client relationship building. Her decision-making has become sharp and strategic, informed by data analysis but tempered with intuitive understanding of human psychology and market dynamics. Her ability to manage our growing team has been instrumental in maintaining the company culture that attracted her in the first place, a balance of professional ambition and personal connection that keeps employee turnover low and client satisfaction high. She's become particularly skilled at identifying talent during hiring processes, often spotting potential in candidates that others might overlook. Much like I had done with her years earlier, Mike has flourished in his role as our chief financial officer, bringing a level of analytical sophistication to our operations that has enabled us to make strategic decisions with confidence rather than hope. His background in corporate finance, initially viewed as potential cultural mismatch with our startup energy, has proven invaluable as we've scaled beyond the point where intuitive decision-making was sufficient. His analytical skills and attention to detail have helped us navigate complex financial decisions as we've grown, from determining optimal pricing structures for different market segments and service offerings to evaluating potential acquisitions of smaller agencies and partnership opportunities with complementary businesses. The financial modeling he's developed allows us to predict cash flow patterns, identify seasonal trends in different industries, and make investment decisions about new technology and personnel with mathematical precision rather than entrepreneurial guesswork. More importantly, he's found purpose in his work that he never had in his corporate job, where he felt like just another cog in an impersonal machine focused solely on quarterly earnings and shareholder value rather than genuine value creation. I spent years crunching numbers for people who didn't care about anything but their next quarterly bonus, he told me recently during one of our monthly one-on-one meetings, his expression thoughtful as he reviewed the financial projections spread across his desk alongside client success stories that showed the human impact of our work. The executives I supported would make decisions that affected thousands of employees, but they never seemed to consider those employees as real people with families and dreams and financial obligations. Here, I'm helping build something that matters to real people. Every decision we make affects our employees, our clients, their customers, entire communities of people whose livelihoods are connected to the businesses we help grow. His office wall is covered with thank you notes from small business owners whose financial situations we've helped transform, alongside charts and graphs that tell the story of our company's steady growth and the economic impact we've generated for our clients. When I analyze ROI now, he explained, I'm not just looking at percentages and profit margins. I'm looking at the livelihoods we're impacting, the dreams we're helping fulfill, the jobs created and families supported through the business growth our campaigns generate. His approach to financial management has become holistic, considering not just immediate profitability, but long-term sustainability and social impact. Sarah has become our Director of Strategic Partnerships, using her corporate experience to help us land major clients while maintaining the personalized service that built our reputation and distinguishes us from larger, more impersonal agencies. Her ability to navigate corporate hierarchies and procurement processes has been crucial in securing contracts with Fortune 500 companies that typically work only with established agencies, with lengthy track records and substantial resources. The transition from corporate executive to team member wasn't always smooth. She was accustomed to hierarchical structures, formal protocols, and decision-making processes that didn't align with our collaborative, flexible, and sometimes improvisational approach to problem-solving, but she's proven herself to be an invaluable part of our growth, bringing relationships and insights that have opened doors I couldn't have accessed on my own, regardless of my enthusiasm or the quality of our work. Her ability to speak the language of Fortune 500 executives while understanding the scrappy mentality of startups has made her our secret weapon in client acquisition and retention. She translates corporate requirements into actionable strategies while ensuring that our unique culture and creative approach aren't compromised by the demands of larger, more bureaucratic clients. Her network of former colleagues has become a pipeline of referrals and opportunities, but more importantly, her credibility within corporate circles has given our agency legitimacy That would have taken years to establish through traditional marketing and business development efforts. She's particularly skilled at identifying decision-makers within complex organizational structures and understanding the unspoken political dynamics that often determine whether proposals are accepted or rejected, regardless of their objective. But perhaps the most satisfying validation came 6 months ago, when I received an unexpected phone call on what had started as an ordinary Tuesday morning in late October. I was reviewing campaign performance metrics for a client in the healthcare industry, analyzing click-through rates and conversion data while sipping my second cup of coffee, when my assistant knocked on my office door with an expression that suggested something significant was happening. Her usual calm demeanor carried an undercurrent of excitement that immediately captured my attention. "Is this the CEO of Catalyst Digital Marketing?" The voice asked when I picked up the phone, professional, but warm, with the kind of tone that suggested this wasn't a sales call or customer service issue. "Yes, this is he," I replied, wondering if this was perhaps a potential client referral or maybe someone following up on a proposal we had submitted weeks earlier. "This is Jonathan Miller from Chicago Business Journal. We're putting together our annual 30 Under 30 list of the most successful young entrepreneurs in Chicago, and your name has come up several times in our research and nominations. We'd like to feature you and your company if you're interested in participating." The conversation that followed was surreal. He mentioned specific metrics about our growth that I hadn't realized were being tracked by external organizations, client testimonials they had gathered through independent research and industry recognition we had received that hadn't seemed particularly significant at the time, but apparently indicated broader impact and influence. The interview process was thorough and professional, involving multiple phone conversations, in-person meetings, and verification of the claims and achievements I described. Jonathan and his team were interested not just in the financial success of the company, but in the story behind it, the challenges overcome, the innovative approaches we had developed, the impact on our clients and employees, and the broader lessons that other entrepreneurs might learn from our experience. They wanted to understand how a company started by someone with no formal business education or venture capital funding had achieved such rapid growth while maintaining high client satisfaction and employee retention rates. The article was published 3 weeks later, with a professional photo of me in our office conference room, surrounded by the team that had made everything possible, and a detailed profile of the company's growth from startup to successful agency. The photographer had spent an entire afternoon capturing the energy of our workspace, the collaboration between team members, and the tangible sense of purpose that permeated our environment. Multiple shots were taken: individual portraits, team photos, candid shots of people working at their desks, and images of our client success wall. Before selecting the final image that would accompany the article, the headline read, "From Retail Worker to Marketing Mogul, How One Man's Vision Became Chicago's Fastest Growing Agency." The article detailed our unconventional origin story, highlighted several client success stories with specific metrics and outcomes, and positioned us as an example of how determination, customer focus, and innovative thinking could compete with larger, more established agencies with substantial resources and decades of experience. The piece explored the challenges of building a service business without significant startup capital, the importance of company culture in attracting and retaining talent, and the strategic decisions that had enabled our rapid growth without compromising quality or client relationships. The day the article came out, my phone didn't stop ringing from 7 a.m. until well past dinner time, creating a constant stream of interruptions that made normal work impossible but provided a fascinating cross-section of reactions to our newfound public recognition. Former colleagues, old acquaintances, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all calling to congratulate me on the achievement and express their amazement at what we had built. Some were genuine, expressing authentic excitement about my success and curiosity about how I had navigated the challenges of entrepreneurship, asking detailed questions about our growth strategies and lessons learned along the way. Others were clearly networking, their congratulations quickly pivoting to requests for meetings, partnership discussions, or job opportunities for themselves or people they knew. The pattern was predictable but still amusing: initial enthusiasm about the article, followed by personal updates about their own career situations, then subtle or direct inquiries about whether we might be able to help them in some way. But all of them had seen the transformation from the guy with the crazy idea to the successful entrepreneur, and their reactions ranged from impressed to incredulous to slightly envious, depending on their own career satisfaction and risk tolerance. Several former managers and colleagues from my retail days called, their voices carrying a mixture of surprise and something that might have been regret, about not taking my business plans more seriously when I had first shared them. A few admitted that they had viewed my entrepreneurial ambitions as unrealistic fantasy rather than achievable goals, and they seemed genuinely curious about how I had overcome the obstacles that had seemed insurmountable from their perspectives. Jessica, the friend who hadn't been part of my company's story, the one who had politely declined my initial invitation to join the venture when it was nothing more than enthusiasm and untested ideas, sent me a text that evening. Saw the article. Incredible what you've built. I've been thinking about making a career change myself. Any chance we could grab coffee? The message arrived along with several others from former classmates and colleagues, each following a similar pattern of congratulations followed by subtle inquiries about opportunities, advice, or connections that might benefit their own career trajectories. I smiled as I read it, not with smugness or vindication, but with understanding born from years of experience with how people respond to success after initially dismissing the possibility of achieving it. The pattern was so familiar by now: people who had been skeptical or dismissive suddenly becoming interested when success became undeniable and publicly recognized, when the risks had been transformed into rewards, and the uncertainty had been replaced by measurable achievements. But the call that meant the most came from my mother later that evening, after the initial flood of congratulations had subsided and I was finally able to process the day's events in quiet reflection. She had always supported my decision to start the company, even when she was worried about my financial security and the risks I was taking by abandoning a stable career path with predictable income and benefits. Her support had been unwavering but not blind. She had asked tough questions about my business plan, encouraged me to consider potential failure scenarios, and provided emotional support during the inevitable moments of doubt and discouragement. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice emotional and filled with the kind of maternal pride that transcends professional accomplishments and speaks to character development and personal growth. Not because of the money or the recognition, but because you never gave up on yourself. Even when it would have been easier to listen to the doubters. Even when I could see you questioning your own decisions during those late-night phone calls when you were exhausted and uncertain. Her words carried the weight of all those conversations during the early days when I had called her, sometimes past midnight, seeking reassurance that I was making the right choices and not simply pursuing an impossible dream at the expense of practical considerations. She remembered the specific moments when my confidence had wavered. After losing a major prospect to a larger agency during the cash flow crisis in our second year, when a key employee had left for a competitor, she had provided steady encouragement without false optimism or unrealistic promises. Her pride wasn't just in the outcome, but in the process, in the daily choices to persist despite uncertainty and setbacks. That evening, after the last congratulatory call had ended and the office had quieted down to its usual after-hours tranquility, I decided to take a walk through the city to process the day's events and reflect on the journey that had led to this moment of recognition. Chicago looked different to me now than it had 5 years ago, not just because of my changed circumstances and improved financial situation, but because my perspective had fundamentally shifted from seeing obstacles to seeing opportunities, from feeling intimidated by the city's scale and competition to feeling energized by its potential and possibilities. The same streets where I had once walked home from Murphy's pub, burning with embarrassment and determination after being dismissed, and laughed at by people I had hoped would support or at least respect my ambitions, now felt like the landscape of possibility rather than rejection. The buildings seemed to hold stories of other dreamers who had transformed ideas into reality, other risk-takers who had chosen uncertain paths toward something meaningful rather than accepting the security of predictable but unfulfilling careers. The city itself had become a partner in my success rather than an intimidating environment full of closed doors and insurmountable challenges. I found myself standing outside the building where I used to work in retail, drawn there by a combination of nostalgia and curiosity about how the place would look through my changed perspective. The store was still there, its neon sign flickering in the evening light, with the same intermittent electrical issue that had been annoying customers and employees for years, but it looked smaller somehow, less significant than it had seemed, when it represented my entire professional world and primary source of income. Through the windows, I could see young employees helping customers, their movements efficient but mechanical, their expressions suggesting they were thinking about something beyond their current responsibilities, perhaps their own dreams and ambitions for something more fulfilling. I thought about the manager who had warned me that they wouldn't have a position for me if my business failed, her tone suggesting that she viewed my entrepreneurial ambitions as a reckless gamble that would inevitably end in disappointment and force me to return with my tail between my legs, grateful for whatever hours they might offer. Her perspective had been shaped by her own experience and risk tolerance, but also by a worldview that saw entrepreneurship as fundamentally unrealistic for people without significant advantages or resources. I wondered if she was still there, still telling young employees that dreams were impractical and that security lay only in traditional employment with established companies, or if perhaps our success story might have caused her to reconsider. Her advice to ambitious young people. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Team dinner tomorrow night to celebrate the article? I'll make reservations at that Italian place downtown, the one where we closed the Henderson deal last month, and where the owner always remembers our names and asks about the business. The message was followed by several others from team members, each expressing excitement about the recognition and suggesting different ways to celebrate the milestone while maintaining the collaborative spirit that had been essential to our success. Mike suggested we invite our families to join the celebration, noting that their support had been crucial during the challenging early years when work-life balance was more aspiration than reality. Sarah recommended that we use the dinner as an opportunity to discuss how the increased visibility might create new business opportunities and what strategic adjustments we might need to make to handle potential growth in client inquiries and partnership requests. I typed back, "Perfect. Include everyone, we have a lot to celebrate. And make sure to invite their families too. This success belongs to all of us, and the people who supported us deserve to share in this moment." The response felt important because it reflected how my understanding of success had evolved from individual achievement to collective accomplishment, from personal vindication to shared prosperity and recognition. As I walked back to my apartment, spacious two-bedroom in Lincoln Park with a view of the lake that had once seemed impossibly luxurious and financially out of reach, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, the accumulation of decisions and circumstances that had transformed uncertainty into stability, ambition into achievement. The nights of doubt when I had stared at financial projections that didn't add up, questioning whether I was building something viable or simply delaying the inevitable return to traditional employment. The early mornings of hustling for clients who weren't sure and unknown. Agency could deliver results comparable to established competitors with proven track records and extensive resources, the small victories that had built into something bigger than I had ever imagined. The first client who renewed their contract. The first employee who chose to stay despite receiving a job offer from a larger company. The first month when our revenue exceeded our expenses by a meaningful margin rather than just breaking even. Each step had seemed incremental at the time, part of the daily routine of problem solving and relationship building. But together they had created a transformation that still sometimes surprised me when I paused to consider the distance traveled and the obstacles overcome. But most of all, I thought about that night at Murphy's pub and the laughter that had changed everything, serving as the catalyst for a journey I couldn't have imagined at the time. Not because it had motivated me to prove them wrong, though. That had certainly been part of my initial drive and a source of energy during difficult moments, but because it had forced me to prove something to myself, that I was capable of more than anyone, including myself, had believed possible. The laughter had been a catalyst, but the real work had been internal. The daily choice to believe in possibility even when evidence suggested otherwise, to maintain faith in long-term vision when short-term results were disappointing or unclear. The doubters hadn't just laughed at my business idea. They had laughed at the possibility that someone could choose their own path and succeed outside traditional structures. That individual vision and determination could overcome systemic advantages and established competition. They had laughed at the audacity of betting on yourself when everyone else is playing it safe, following prescribed routes to predictable outcomes, accepting limitations rather than challenging them. Their laughter had represented a broader skepticism about whether unconventional approaches could compete with established methods, whether passion and creativity could substitute for resources and connections. Today, many of those same people work for me or do business with me. Their perspectives shifted by the undeniable reality of what we've built together and the success that contradicted their initial predictions. They send me their resumes carefully crafted to emphasize skills and experiences they hope will be relevant to our agency's needs. They ask for my advice about their own career transitions or entrepreneurial ideas, seeking insights from someone who has successfully navigated the challenges they once viewed as insurmountable. They seek partnerships with my company, proposing collaborations that would have seemed impossible when they dismissed my initial vision as unrealistic fantasy. The irony isn't lost on me. The same people who once viewed my ambitions as unrealistic now want to be associated with the results of those ambitions, to benefit from the success they didn't believe was possible. But this recognition doesn't bring me the satisfaction I thought it would during those early days when proving them wrong felt like the ultimate goal and primary motivation. Instead, it brings me something more valuable and sustainable. The understanding that success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. About validating your own belief in what's possible rather than seeking external validation or vindication. Tomorrow I'll walk into my office and continue building something that matters, surrounded by people who share the vision that seemed so impossible just a few years ago but now feels like the natural result of consistent effort, strategic thinking, and unwavering commitment to our core values. I'll work with my team to help our clients grow their businesses, create jobs, and achieve their own dreams, each success story adding another layer to the foundation we're building together. Each client relationship representing an opportunity to create positive impact beyond immediate financial returns. I'll mentor young entrepreneurs who are facing the same doubts and fears I once faced, sharing not just tactical advice about marketing strategies and business development, but the deeper truth that belief in yourself is the prerequisite for everything else. The technical skills can be learned, the strategies can be adapted, the markets can be analyzed, but the fundamental faith in your own capability to create something valuable is what separates successful entrepreneurs from people who remain trapped by other people's limitations and expectations. And sometimes, when I meet someone who reminds me of that 25-year-old with a crazy idea and the burning ambition, someone whose eyes carry that mixture of hope and terror that comes with betting everything on an uncertain future, someone who is struggling to maintain confidence in the face of skepticism and practical concerns, I'll tell them the same thing I wish someone had told me that night at Murphy's pub. Their laughter doesn't define your potential. Your determination does. The path from idea to reality is never as straightforward as it appears from the outside. And the people who laugh at your ambitions often do so because they've never found the courage to pursue their own dreams. Because your willingness to take risks reminds them of their own unfulfilled potential and the compromises they've made in the name of security. The company that started as a response to doubt has become something much more important, a place where people can build careers they're proud of, where small businesses can grow into something bigger and more impactful, where dreams backed by hard work and strategic thinking become reality rather than remaining perpetual fantasies. It's become a testament to the power of believing in something before anyone else does, of maintaining faith in your vision even when the evidence is scarce and the skeptics are loud and persistent. That's the real victory. Not the vindication of being right when others were wrong. Not the satisfaction of proving doubters incorrect. But the deeper fulfillment of building something meaningful that creates value for everyone. It touches employees who find purpose and financial stability in their work, clients who achieve their goals and expand their own impact, and communities that benefit from the economic activity and job creation our campaigns help generate. They laughed when I said I'd start a company. Today they work for me. But more importantly, today we all work together towards something bigger than any of us could have achieved alone. Something that transforms not just individual lives, but entire business ecosystems, creating ripple effects of prosperity and opportunity that extend far beyond our immediate sphere of influence. And that's a success story worth telling, worth living, and worth building upon for whatever challenges and opportunities the future may bring. The laughter that once stung has become the soundtrack to a journey that exceeded every expectation and proved that sometimes the most impractical dreams become the most valuable realities.